Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to all my colleagues for their speeches, particularly my colleague, the member for Saint-Laurent, Cartierville, who's done a lot of work on this issue. He was the architect of the Clarity Bill, and today this is once again the topic of debate. I'd like to point out at the outset that I have a lot of respect for my colleague, too, the member for Richmond, Arthabaska, and all my colleagues from the Bloc Québécois. We work here as members of Parliament. We're all equals, but on this issue, obviously, we are of different views, and I don't think it's possible to support this, for the Green Party to support this bill, C-457, and I'll explain why. It's clear that the Green Party of Canada and the Green Party of Quebec are fully in agreement with the principle that the people of Quebec have the right and the power to make decisions on their own future. It is, in fact, only up to them. But how? What's the clearest way and the most equal way in a democracy like Canada, an incredible country like Canada? What's the best way to make this type of decision? These are difficult questions, the sovereignty of Quebec and the rights of Quebecers, men and women. There are issues that are of vital importance to Canada and Quebec. Now, this bill, put forward by the member for Richmond, Arthabaska, is the result of a motion here in the House of the Commons, and the term used was nation, that Quebecers constitute a nation.
When it came out that the Prime Minister had decided to put forward a motion that Quebecers are a nation, there were a lot of questions as to what this would mean. At the time, and certainly it may be a bit in our history, but we recall that the current Member of Parliament for Wellington Halton Hills, who was himself the minister responsible for intergovernmental affairs, couldn't agree with the position and hadn't been consulted by the Prime Minister. It's unfortunate in this particular administration that the Prime Minister presumes to run all portfolios, and I think it was to the great how do I put this? The minister at the time, Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs, did something quite extraordinary and with great integrity chose to leave cabinet and sit in backbenches voluntarily because he couldn't agree with that position. And I agree with that member of Wellington Halton Hills that you either put forward a motion that means something or it doesn't mean something. And this particular private member's bill rests on the reality that that motion didn't mean anything. If it meant what it said, then this Bloc Québécois private member's bill would have to pass. If all the members of Parliament in this House who voted for that motion, that Quebecers are a nation, really meant it, then this motion, this private member's bill, would have to pass. But we all recognize, and I think there's very little support in this House for the current private member's bill, because we want the Clarity Act. We want to make sure that this House and that the process of coming up with a question on the issue as important as another referendum, and I think we all hope it will never occur, but if there should be another referendum on the question of Quebec leaving Canada, we'd want to make sure the Clarity Act was followed. But as a political ploy, as a convenient motion that in effect meant nothing, every other party in this House, other than the Green Party, supported a motion that Quebecers are a nation. And today, you're all hoist with your own petard. Because the reality is, if that motion meant anything, you'd have to vote for this private member's bill being put forward by the Member of Parliament for Richmond Arthabaska. I think it's a shame to vote on anything as important as touching on the sovereignty of Quebecers and Quebec as a nation, to turn it into a political ploy that meant nothing.
But now it's clear that the motion that Quebecers constitute in principle a nation, that was a meaningless motion. It was of no force and effect, because if it was, the member for Richmond Arthabaska would be right today. that it's unreasonable to have a Clarity Act with a clear question and with a role for the Parliament of Canada. It's clear that we need the Clarity Act. It's essential for the people of Quebec to have a clear question. For everyone in Canada who respects the rights of Quebecers, and it's clear that everyone does respect that. I hope so, at least. For the people of Quebec, on important issues for their future, it's essential to have a clear question. And that's why I will give the Green Party support for the Clarity Act, but unfortunately, we have the motion that says that Quebecers are a nation, but that motion has no effect. With that, I will say that the Green Party will be voting against this, will be voting no on Bill C-457. But at the same time, I'd like to thank the member for Richmond Arthabaska for showing quite clearly that the motion that all the other parties endorsed in the past was a motion of no force or effect. That's unfortunate because I think that's unfortunate for the people of Quebec.
That the motion that Quebecers were a nation was, as I always suspected, a bit of political theatre without effect. And I thank the Member of Parliament for Richmond Arthabaska for pointing it out so clearly. Merci.
Thank you.